jump right in to tell people it's not a bulldozer, as if those people don't know what a bulldozer is. Well, it's still cold outside. I needed to warm the tractor up, go move a few things, and firewood and whatnot, and I need to take the bucket off. And I thought, well, that might be a good time to show what I've done to the bucket. So, reminder, if this is the first time catching this, yes, it's still Brendan, it's still BRC fallow deer, but it's winter time and it's a good time to talk about other farm projects and whatnot. And a little bit of quick background, I got this T74, let me back up. I got this T474 TYM brand tractor to replace the John Deere 2038R that I had. I just needed more lift capacity. I want a little more width, a little more stability. We just kind of outgrew the 2038R. Nothing wrong with the tractor. It performs above its class, I think. I never really had issues with it. So I've been documenting some of the things I've discovered on the TYM, as well as modifications I've made and improvements and things I've found, you know, that kind of stuff, because there's information about the tractors, but there's not a lot of modification type stuff. There's not. I just felt like there was an area that was kind of missing. So, like I've said before, I'm always trying to make my equipment better, make it do the job more efficiently, more quickly, more comfortably. So part of that was when I bought the TYM 474, obviously open station tractor. Before I bought it, I was on, you know, the Facebook groups and forums, whatever, trying to get myself comfortable with going outside of a brand that I knew to something else. And one of the complaints I saw right out of the gate was the buckets, the lower bucket edge getting bent on the 474. Not so much just the 474, but several of the TYM models. Now, part of that's because they lift so much, and there's gonna be a weak point somewhere. Either your bucket is overbuilt and your tractor can't lift enough, and so it's kind of just wasted material, or you know, or your bucket's not heavy enough and you can lift a ton. So do you fault the bucket, or do you say, well, yeah, but you can lift, you know, a whole lot of weight for its size? I don't know. I don't really have an opinion. I hear a lot of people that, you know, will criticize the way that people use their tractors, and sometimes it's deserved, but I also don't like that being the answer to everything. You know, somebody will have, I don't know, somebody will be lifting something and show a picture of, look how much, you know, look what I carried the other day, and immediately somebody is going to respond and say, you're going to destroy your front axle, you can't, this isn't a skid steer, it's not an excavator, it's not a spaceship, you know, whatever. And some people need to hear that, but not everybody. And I don't like it to be the immediate crutch, because they should be capable machines. They should be built durably, and if they're not, they need to be called out for it. Now, I'm not saying that. Let's get back to the bucket. So I read people having issues with the buckets bending, and as soon as I got my tractor, I looked, and it was actually bent right from the get-go. I hadn't even done anything yet, and that lower bucket edge had just a little bit of a curve to it. So On the old tractor, I had a Piranha tooth bar, and I was pretty happy with it. So I thought, well, step one, I'm going to order one of those. That'll provide a little bit of leading edge stability, cutting edge stability, whatever you want to call it, strength and stability. Plus, I do like the tooth bar and the capability that it adds. But I also had an old, I don't know if it's a cutting edge from a, in fact, I think it's a bucket cutting edge. It's just straight, but it was like 3/8 inch steel. I think it's 6 or 7 inches, in width. I had that sitting around in the shop that was here when we bought the place, and so I thought, well, I might be able to reinforce the bucket right out of the gate and hopefully not deal with bending it later. So I'll show you what I did. Now, you have to forgive me, the bucket's dirty. It's 20 degrees outside, so it's all frozen on there. I sort of halfway tried to clean it off, but I wasn't going to try to thaw out a hose and spray it down. It's all frozen anyway, so it's a working bucket, but hopefully you'll be able to get the gist of what I did here. So we'll start with the tooth bar. I'm assuming everybody knows what a Piranha tooth bar is. If you found this video, you probably already know what that is, but it's made by a company, I think the company's called B Expanded. I think they started out making stuff for the Kubota BX or something, so it's, anyway, look up Piranha tooth bar, you'll find it. But it's some version of a hardened steel, sort of like sharp on the bottom, a little bit of a cutting edge, and then it's got all these serrations. And it's, I don't know, 3/8 or 1/2 inch steel. I think it's a 1/2 inch. Might even be a little thicker than that, but it's, I think it's worth it. It's hard to say without trying one thing and then going right into something else. It depends on what you're doing. Tearing up sod and stuff, I think it makes it easier. Getting a full bucket into a big dirt pile, I think it makes it easier. I think it increases bucket capacity just a little bit, just by the fact that it sticks out 3 or 4 inches, probably 4 inches. You can get a little bit more dirt in there. I've also used it cutting brush off, especially blackberry bushes. I can drive in along the ground and kind of just tear them up. So I think it does increase the capability, depending on what you need to do with your tractor. Now, it's got these, it's just bolted on each side of the bucket, and it's got these little tabs that kind of hold it in place. So I would assume it adds some strength to the cutting edge as well. It's not attached to the cutting edge, but it's it's mounted to it. So that was the first thing I did. The second thing was the cutting edge that I mentioned that I found in the shop, and I welded that, cut it into, well, let's back up. So this bucket structure on the bottom, it's got your cutting edge, it's got the Piranha tooth bar, then it has these perpendicular, I guess, reinforcements or whatever you want to call it, that are 1/4 inch steel. There's 3 of them that are on the bucket. There's one right here, one here, one on the other end. So I cut that cutting edge that's right here. I cut it into 4 pieces to fit in each of these gaps, and then I welded it, the edge of the bucket, the main body of the bucket, the current cutting edge, the reinforcement, so it's welded to connect all that stuff together. I did have somebody tell me that this wouldn't help any. I'm not sure how it could not help any. I mean, it's adding rigidity to the bucket. Does it solve all the world's problems? No, I don't think so. Probably not. But it was metal I already had. It didn't really cost me anything. A little bit of time to weld it. Now, be aware, if you're going to do this, this bucket is not very thick. So you're not going to be able to see it because I repainted it, but where I welded, of course, it burned into the bucket material, and so it created little high spots in some places, or obviously it distorted the paint or burned the paint off. So I did have to repaint just the spots. I don't care what the inside of the bucket looks like. It doesn't need to be all perfectly uniform, but just cleaned up the spots where the weld burned through and repainted. Just something to be aware of. But that's what I did for the bucket. It can't hurt. I've not abused the bucket, but I have used it for a couple things that I was a little bit worried. I kind of feel like it would have bent had I not had these two methods of reinforcement here. And I'll take you outside in here in just a bit and show you what I did. But that's what I've done to the bucket. Just a couple ideas. If you can get a hold of some stout metal, you know, I'd say feel free to weld that in there and try to make it as stout as you can. And the tractor's got plenty of lifting capability, so it's not like the extra weight is really going to be an issue with this bucket. So the next thing I was going to show today is something I'm more excited about. So 474 open station, I've got a step right here, right? And it's got a obviously factory mounted step. On the other side, there is no step. Now I recognize the issues with getting on this side. It's not so bad on the 474 versus like the 4815 style where the loader controls come off of the loader mast itself right here. You know, that becomes kind of a safety issue. This is much more open, and obviously it depends on who you are and how tall you are. Everybody should not get on and off their tractor on this side. But I'm 6'4", and so it's really not a big deal for me to step up to the platform. I don't get on and off this side of the tractor often, but it's not uncommon. You know, whether I'm up against brush on the other side or I'm up against a gate or whatever the case may be, people are going to say never get on and off your tractor on this side. Fine, I'm going to. I was going to before I built a step, and now I'm just going to do it much safer. So what I would do before, not to air my dirty laundry, but I would put my foot, if you can see that, put my foot right here and then step up and over. And it works, but I'm awful close to these pedals, and it could go bad if you step on that pedal or catch your foot on it or whatever. I just didn't like that. Now, the other way I've made this a little bit safer is a previous video I showed you how to adjust this loader joystick, tilted back a little bit, so it's even more out of the way than it was before. But I tried to find a step. You know, I couldn't find a factory step. Some of the other models have a factory step on this side, but I couldn't find anybody who would put one on. And it does have factory holes, mounting locations, but I suspect they use this platform on like the maybe the 494, 574, and I think it maybe does come on a step, but the loader hydraulic valve is located differently. So I took the factory step off the other side. The mounting spacing and all that's the same, but it interferes with the loader controls, the cables, the hydraulic valve. Of course, this is my third function I added. It interferes with all that, so it won't fit. Because here is actually, I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but here is actually the mounting location that fits the factory step as far as width goes. Obviously, that's not going to work. So I built a step. Now, I didn't get dimensions and all that. You know, if somebody wants that stuff, they can ask and I'll measure. But what I did, I'll throw a couple pictures up that I snapped along the way. But what I did was I pulled the factory step off of the left side, kind of used it as a guide for the support arms to cut out of steel. They're not the exact same because I kind of knew where I needed more space, especially on this forward one. I kind of used it as a guide, and as far as height, I tried to make this step the same height as the other one. That way, you know, the muscle memory of getting on and off, I'm not going to trip getting on this side because the step's higher or the step's lower. So here's the step itself. Again, it's dirty because I've been using it. Rectangular metal tube. I just kind of welded some intermittent beads along it, you know, to give some traction, some flat metal, and then you have, of course, the uprights, and it's all 1/4" steel, and that's a thinner tube. So I did use the aft factory mounting hole, which is right here. It's got a nut welded on. Of course, it's metric, so you got to deal with that. But to give myself a little more room back on the step back here, I welded another piece of that same rectangular tube to kind of offset that bracket to the back. So I did use the factory mounting hole back there. On the front, I didn't. There's a square tube as part of the tractor frame here. This hole up front, again where that nut is, would be the factory location, which is not going to work with a third function. There's another hole, or 2 sets of holes, right there, and so that's just what I did was I threaded the upright support of my step. I threaded it, not to metric, because that just, you know why, and that's how I attached that forward support. So spacing of the holes was about the same. It's all kinds of strong. I mean, it's attached super solidly. It doesn't move at all. But that's a step, and I tell you what, it's great, because now I'm putting my foot here, stepping all the way over all this stuff, and sitting down and getting off again, rather than putting my foot in that little space trying to not hit a pedal. Got a place to put my heel, and it's so much safer. So again, I'm not saying everybody should put a step on that side of their tractor, because some people, no offense to anybody, are wider than I am, and it can become a safety issue. I was going to get on and off this side of the tractor whether it has that step or not. So this is 10 times safer with the step. But anyway, yeah, that's really nice. Like I said, when I do have to get on and off this side, that's something that I've only had it for a couple of weeks, and it's great. So that's gonna be it for today. I hate these videos getting too long. I've got a couple other things that I've heard people request pictures for and whatever that I'll try to get. I got to disassemble a couple things to show what I did. So it's a bucket reinforcement. Now let's I'll take you outside and show you what I did with the bucket that did not bend it, and I feel like it's proof that this bucket reinforcement and the Piranha tooth bar are worth it. So let's go outside. So I realize this tractor's not a bulldozer, and I hear people say that a lot when, you know, a bucket gets bent or whatever. You know, they'll jump right in to tell people it's not a bulldozer, as if those people don't know what a bulldozer is. But there are some shortcomings with sizes of tractors, different brands. You know, they're not all. A tractor title doesn't make it equal to all of the other tractor titles. Now, I'm not saying that one's better or worse, but if there really is an issue with bucket design or whatever, the answer to that can't be, well, it's not a bulldozer. You know, if I made a bucket out of Jello and you destroyed it, could I say, well, you know, it's not a bulldozer? Anyway, so I had a stump that I needed gone, or I really wanted gone, and in a sense, I was aware that there was a chance I'd bend the bucket removing this stump, because it had been dead. It had been mostly dead for about 3 years, but it always had just a little bit of regrowth trying to come back. So it did concern me, and like I said, I was aware that there was a chance I would bend something. But I also kind of wanted to see it. I don't want to find the limit, but I want to at least know where I'm comfortable. So here's the aftermath. And here's the stump. It's I don't know, it's 12-inch diameter, a little bigger. It was a big elm tree, and those elm trees are actually pretty tough. The wood's not the hardest in the world, but it's stringy and it's kind of hard to deal with. And it had shallow roots coming out because it's so rocky here, you know, shallow roots going every direction. So I could push on it and tell that I had a little bit of give. But what I ended up having to do was go around the outside of the stump in that hole, go around the outside and kind of get the tooth bar underneath each root and kind of chew it apart. And once I did that, I could push the thing over. And I had to do that from all four sides, chewing those roots apart little bits at a time. That's definitely a place where that tooth bar made a difference, because I don't think I could have done that with a flat bucket. That being said, you know, I also didn't put the middle of the bucket on the stump. You know, I'd put it right in front of a loader arm. Now the trade-off there is, if something is going to bend, would I rather it be the bucket from pushing in the middle, or I should say the lower edge of the bucket from pushing in the middle of the bucket, or the loader arm from putting this asymmetric load on the loader itself, the loader frame. Well, I'd rather bend the bucket, but I'd rather not bend either one. Honestly, the loader arms seem like they're plenty strong. The issues I've seen people have, I suspect, are, well, they seem to be manufacturer defect, or, you know, bolts that came loose, you know, that kind of stuff. Not you know, metal breaking so much. Of course, I've checked all my bolts and all that. But anyway, so I did get the stump pushed out. It actually worked pretty well. Got the area, you know, sort of leveled out again, so I don't have to steer around the stump as I'm going through this gate. But I was able to do it, and I think part of that was due to the tooth bar. And there's potential to say that the loader didn't bend because of the extra tooth bar and or the reinforcement that I put on the bottom. Now my other project, I was also pretty worried about. We'll start with the big one. I had a bunch of piles of rocks from a water line project. At this rock covered with pipes, and I wanted them moved out of the way. I'd originally piled them with an excavator. Here's one of the rocks. I couldn't lift it with a tractor, but I basically put the loader up against it and pushed. Several thousand pounds for sure. But I had lots of rocks, not that big, that was the biggest, but lots of other rocks in different piles that I wanted moved. And so I used a bucket for that. Just kind of pushing into the pile of rocks and picking them up as I go. I don't know if it's outside. Each rock is hundreds of pounds easily. So that was a good test of the bucket, you know. Pushing into a pile of rocks where the leading edge is getting caught on stuff. It's just kind of hard on things. And again, I kind of think that tooth bar helped, because that edge has some, you know, angles and whatnot to help get in between rocks that were in the pile. And all that to say, I didn't bend anything, at least not that I could tell. So I think the reinforcement was worth it. Does it make it bulletproof? Of course not. But reinforcement was worth it. I think the tooth bar is worth it. If you're doing work like that, you can be preemptive and reinforce your bucket, and then I think you have less to worry about. So it's worked well for me, and I feel less anxious about possibly damaging the bucket using it to its full capabilities. So that's all I got for today. As I keep learning the tractor, I'll keep modifying it as I see fit and upgrading, and can always strive to make our equipment do the job better.